Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's edition of Limitless Living with Iyanla Gabrielle. I'm your host, Iyanla Gabrielle, and tonight we have the privilege to start a dialogue that I believe is not only going to be powerful, but it's going to be inspirational for you. When we talk about limitless living, we talk about careers, we talk about our dreams, we talk about our goals, but tonight we are talking about the family. So I hope that you guys are just as excited and ready to go as I am. And so for those of you all who have been on social media lately and you've been watching television, you must have seen or at least heard or seen some of the footage that's been going around that's been happening on the Oprah Winfrey Network with the Iyanla Van Zant's Fix My Life show. So a few weeks ago, we began to see Iyanla have what they call the mega fix. She began to do an episode. She did a 3-part series where she worked with a man named Jay who had 34 children with 17 different women, and then also had a few other children that he took in as his own. And during these 3 sessions and these 3 segments of Iyanla Fix My Life, the conversation that opened up over social media was so large and so great that OWN decided to do a special to continue the conversation. And over the last 3 Saturdays, the first Saturday, they gathered a few of the mothers of some of Jay's children to come along and have a conversation with the women. And then the last 2 Saturdays, there's been a conversation of healing that's been going on for men that have multiple children and with multiple women. And as this conversation has opened up, Saturday night social media has been off of the chain. It's been crazy and amazing, the things that have been happening over social media, the conversations and the dialogue that you've been seeing. And so we want to continue some of that conversation and some of that dialogue tonight. So we have with us one of the most phenomenal speakers, authors that we could find in our network to come and be a part of Limitless Living with DG tonight. This is a powerful woman that is called and has a passion for family, for restoring the brokenness that we see in families to build and create healthy families. Her name is Sindy Eugene, and she is the author of the book 12 Ways to Bridge the Gap Between You and Your Child. She's also the author of Your Major, 7 Strategies for Choosing the Right One. And she's also one of several authors in a collaborative book called The Art of Activation, where she wrote a chapter entitled Bridging Family from the Heart, Building Family from the Heart. So we are so excited to have Sindy Eugene. She's a motivational speaker and author and a coach that works with families, and we are so honored to have her with us today. So, Sindy, welcome to the Limitless Living with DG call. We're so glad to have you tonight.
I am so happy and honored as well. I'm excited. Woo! I'm so excited. Thank you for inviting me, and it's an honor to be on your show. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you today. Now, first thing that I want to know from you is, have you had an opportunity to take a look at the segments that have been going on? Have you had a chance to look at the show, Iyanla Fix My Life, what's been going on with Jay in this conversation?
I have, and the most recent one really touched me on so many different levels. The one where the gentleman, he had 4 or 5 kids, I believe, but his mom began crying in the audience. And so she began sharing her concern about her son. In the midst of, prior to the gentleman that had the 30-something kids coming up, that segue between conversations with Iyanla before she interviewed the gentleman, this young adult, 24, I believe, he just broke down and cried as his mom began to share his brokenness and what led him to become who he is at that moment when that show was being aired.
That was a very powerful moment. I think I cried as well. I think my daughter she got a little water in her eye, so I kind of moved it back. It was definitely a powerful time, and it was interesting just to see social media was lighting up. I was watching social media as a lot of this was going on. It was really lighting up. You could tell just based on the posts that were being posted that a lot of people were really getting healing from what was there. And so now that this conversation has been open, Sindy, and the family is your specialty, the conversation has been started, and the dialogue is beginning. What do we do now that this can of worms has been opened? What's next after this conversation?
Well, the next thing would be the children. Because, yes, the parents of the father who gave birth or shall I say, had all these kids, the parents is going through the healing. The individual who have all the kids is going through a healing. But now we need to open up the platform for the children because they could be siblings and never know each other. And so often we've seen cases where siblings begin dating and having relationships because they don't even realize that they're siblings. And so that would be the next question is, now that I know my dad has 30-something, 40-something, 50-something children, can we have a dialogue where all of us come together and to really see who's who, and to now dish out or start peeling the layers of frustration? Well, why weren't you there at my birthday? Or why weren't you there at my graduation? Because these kids have these things bottled up. Yeah, I get it. The parents need to be healed, but the damage was done to the children.
That's a good point that you bring up, the damage of the children, because that's what we have not seen, and that's the conversation that has not started. And so what do, for parents that are single parents that maybe they're the father, and let's look at it from that perspective since this is kind of the platform that's been open. So now you have these fathers, as they begin to sit down and talk to their children, oftentimes the question becomes, where do I start? So what would be your suggestions, some practical ways that fathers that may not have been there or been as active as they wanted to, how can they begin the conversation towards healing?
To be honest, just start it. Reach out to that child and begin building a platform or begin building a bridge where both child and parent can connect. Because when we sit and we think, oh, my gosh, it's going to be bad, or, oh, my gosh, I don't know what to say, or, oh, my gosh, it's been so long, all of that is surface. Let's get to the core. Pick up the phone and call, or find out where that child is and make that connection, because that connection is the beginning of a journey of building experiences between father and child or mother and child.
Wow. So you're saying just start where you are, start with what you have. So what happens, one of the things that we found in the first episodes, the first foundational episodes where they were sharing the story about Jay and his children, and particularly his family, is some of the older children were at a point in their life where they were saying, I don't want anything to do with you. It's too late. It's over. What advice would you give to a parent, whether it's a father or a mother that may be out there and has seen this, and now they're saying, hey, I've got to man up. I've got to woman up. I need to build this relationship with my child. But the child is saying, I don't want it. I don't want you. I don't want you in my life. What advice do you give to that parent? Do they walk away? Do they run away? What advice do you give them?
The advice I would give them is to honestly give that child time, but don't stop the effort of reaching out. Because remember, this child is speaking from a place of hurt. If I'm 40 or 50, and I can give you a prime example for myself, my dad wasn't in my life. You understand? Although he lived in Miami, but it was just a come and go type of thing, pick me up at the corner because he couldn't come to the house. And so, I would only see him maybe once in a blue moon. But years passed by, and I attempted to them. And it was unsuccessful. Now that I'm older and I've continuously tried, when I see my dad, just like these children that are 40-something, we are speaking from a place of hurt. We are speaking from a place of bitterness. And so the parent who was absent all these years need to give us time to open up. It's not that we don't, but you have to give us time because you built us this way. And so because you've trained us to not be connected with you, now we have to now reprogram our minds from a child's perspective to receive that which you're going to want to give us at this point of time. And so my advice is don't give up. Still continue reaching out, but have the patience, because the way we train our children to receive us is a lot difficult or challenging, if you will, to undo all of those threads, if you will, that we've sewn on together for so long. It takes time.
That's a good point. I think that you bring up such a good point of consistency, that if the consistency hasn't been there in the past, there has to be a level of consistency. One of the things that my mentor used to tell me all the time is that for the level of what you've done wrong, you have to supersede that in what you do right. So it's just like the number line. If you are on -10, in order for you to start seeing an impact, you not only have to get to 0, you have to go from -10 to 0 to 10, and you really don't start seeing the change until you surpass 10, which really is 20 steps instead of 10 steps. And so I think that you make a really strong point when you begin to talk about that. And so my question for you is that the conversation is here. The healing is starting to move, and maybe the person that's listening says, hey, you know, I'm a father, I'm a mother, we're in our children's lives, but how do we help? So how can we, just as people around the world, take this message in this conversation that has opened up to the next level, even if it's not our children? What can we do as communities to help solve this problem?
There's something that has been initiated a couple of years ago, I believe. It's called Family Day. And Family Day is centralized around the concept of really getting families to sit down at the dinner table and eat. Because when you're eating at a restaurant or you're eating at home, a lot of good conversation usually takes place. You get to the meats and the potato of, you know, life or what's going on. So as a community, my recommendation is to create a platform or an environment where families can come together to just dialogue, not so much PTA meetings, and, you know, we need to raise money for this, and we need to raise money for that, and spaghetti dinners and box talk. No, not, okay, well, let's do drug prevention and this. Not saying that that's not important, but if you can't get these families to sit and have a dialogue with one another, how are you going to resolve the drug addiction? How are you going to resolve the...
For more information and to hear the rest of this conversation, connect with us on social media where you can hear the entire call.